Madison Cawthorn has a target on his back. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. Madison Cawthorn is back in the news, this time after he has responded to the controversy swirling around him. We're going to take a hard look at those controversies and ask ourselves whether someone is setting him up. Remember what Ian Fleming said about coincidences. Once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, and the third time it's enemy action. And when his likely enemies are our definite enemies, that goes double. First, I want to shout out to the sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. And be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down to the bottom for that link. Lots of good merchandise there, including this t-shirt, the Trumpinator, saying, "I'll be back." And I want to remind you, I am a published author. Look for 2 new books. Here's one of them, Matthew's Run, and its sequel, Matthew's War. They tell the story of what our country and our world might look like after 380-odd years of wokeness, and about a cyborg with a conscience who also just doesn't like to be used, leading a rebellion against it. They're available right now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, to name 2. All right, ladies and gentlemen, grab your popcorn. We're here to look at a politician who is getting hits from the Democratic Party and the Republican establishment ahead of his May 17th primary. The guy must be doing something right, as I said last time I talked about him. In fact, I have links in the description to 2 videos I've done already about him. He describes official Washington as a hard party town of orgies and cocaine. Excuse me, white powdery substances. And although he says some people tend to exaggerate, he won't walk it back. In one show of particularly bad sense, he brought a loaded gun to the Charlotte Douglas Airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. At least he admitted to having it, and the TSA confiscated it and provided a photograph. In fact, he has recently apologized for carrying it. Folks, that doesn't pass the smell test. The timing gives it the fishy smell. Anyone in the surprise of the moment might try to smooth something over to avoid making a bad situation worse. Suppose then that someone planted that gun. After all, why would anyone these days try to smuggle a loaded gun aboard an aircraft anywhere in the world, unless that person intended to hijack the plane or kill someone on board? And no one is accusing Madison Cawthorn of that, at least not credibly. Or unless someone in his campaign packed the loaded gun in his bag and didn't tell him. So why didn't he complain at the time? Well, anyone can also wonder whether he absent-mindedly did some untoward thing himself. Taking advantage of someone's own self-assessment as an absent-minded professor is the time-honored way to gaslight someone. Hey, we saw Charles Boyer do it to Ingrid Bergman in the movie that turned the word gaslight into a verb. Now, why should he be such a target? 2 reasons. First, because he puts America first, ahead of either empire building or subservience to anyone else's empire. Second, because he exposed official Washington for the cesspool that it is. The Hill yesterday published a timeline of Madison Cawthorn controversies. In this order, writers Sharatsky Ray lists, speaking of the January 6th rally ahead of that false flag pseudo event, refusing to apologize for it, correctly calling those still languishing in prison political hostages. He said that on August 30th, 2021. Suing the North Carolina Board of Elections to stay on the ballot in spite of them. Calling President Biden an inept geriatric despot over his deployment of American troops to Eastern Europe 2 weeks before Russia invaded Ukraine, by the way. Driving with a suspended license. Calling Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky a thug. Exposing the Washington sex and drug party atmosphere. Taking heat from a former employee who accused him of keeping a bar in his office. Having to deal with Caribbean cruise ship photos taken years ago. Allegedly trying to get onto an airliner with a loaded gun, and facing insider trading allegations over his support for the Let's Go Brandon crypto coin. You know, the interesting part is that Ray left out the allegation that he had an unloaded gun in a carry-on bag at the Asheville airport in February 2021. Well, maybe it was her turn to make an absent-minded mistake. Naturally, Madison Cawthorn replied 3 days ago that the Republican establishment is getting at him. He tweeted a 2-minute video alleging that yesterday. I have a link to it in the description. And he has good cause to believe rhinos are tripping over themselves to defeat him. Salon talked about how Republicans hate Madison Cawthorn. When they do that, they give away the game. Separately, the Daily Mail carried pictures of Cawthorn with someone's hand in a sensitive spot on his body. Seeing that, Jamel Bowie, who writes for the New York Times, tweeted, and I quote, "They're coming down so hard on this guy that I half wonder whether the cocaine orgies are real." Unquote Jamel Bowie. Well, hey, she's in good company, for so does Newsweek. CBS News reports that a group calling itself American Muckrakers is pressing an ethics complaint against Cawthorn. They allege that he has lavished a munificent $250 on the very aid in the hand in wrong place picture. Not in cash, but in housing and travel allowances. $250! Whiskey Tango Foxtrot! Do they think they're kidding? And as for the whooping and hijinks on a cruise liner, Madison Cawthorn effectively asked whether that's the best his enemies can do. 3% Nation likewise reminds everyone that the Caribbean cruise pictures are several years old. In fact, they allege blackmail, and that the blackmailers released the pictures after he called their bluff. So let's sum up, shall we? Everyone agrees why he is a target. He puts America first and has said out loud that Washington is Sodom West. And by the way, a federal judge threw out the attempt to keep him off the ballot, citing the Amnesty Act of 1872. The judge didn't bring up the Amnesty Act of 1898, which removed every last exception that the 1872 Act had made. Furthermore, the Heritage Foundation wrote a legal memorandum on April 6, saying why such keep-off-the-ballot efforts break the Constitution. I have a link in the description of that too. That memorandum clearly shows that the Amnesty Acts of 1872 and 1898 passed with 2/3 supermajorities in both chambers of Congress. Nor did either act specifically reference the war between the states as the insurrection or rebellion in view. Therefore, it applies today, whether or not anyone charges anyone with insurrection over the January 6th event. So they can't keep Madison Cawthorn off the ballot. A federal judge said so. Therefore, they resort to dredging up pictures of whooping and hijinks from events before Madison Cawthorn came to Congress. They also make a big deal of more recent whooping and hijinks and a whopping $250 worth of favors. And maybe, just maybe, someone on his staff plants a gun in his carry-on bag. Mr. Cawthorn, if you can hear me, understand this. You have troublemakers in your office. You have to clean house, little h, so that you can win re-election and help clean house, big H. Links in the description of the article to the Heritage Foundation legal memorandum on why Amendment 14 Section 3 can't keep anyone off a ballot anymore. Videos of Madison Cawthorn laying it on the line and me talking about him earlier. And a conservative news and views. I have another link to the awesome online store as I mentioned. And if you like what you've heard, you can like this video and subscribe to this channel. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.